Hey everyone! Today we're talking about one of the most famous armies in history, the Roman army. This army was super organized, disciplined, and full of smart strategies. It helped Rome build a massive empire that lasted for hundreds of years. But how did they do it? Let's break it down in a way that's easy to understand. The Roman army didn't start out as the powerful force we know today. In the beginning, it was pretty basic. Some people say Rome's founder, Romulus, created the first army, but others think early Romans fought more like the Greeks, using tight formations called phalanxes. Back then, only wealthy people could join the army, and the richest fought on horseback. Poorer people often couldn't join at all. Things started changing around the 4th century BCE. The Romans switched to smaller, faster groups of soldiers called maniples. These groups, made up of about 120 to 160 men, were easier to move around than the big, bulky Greek formations. This gave Rome an advantage, especially against enemies like Macedonia, whose armies couldn't keep up. By the time Rome fought Hannibal in the Second Punic War, their army had grown even more. Battles lasted longer, so Rome began setting up permanent military bases instead of fighting only during certain seasons. But this led to a problem. They were running out of soldiers. That's when Gaius Marius stepped in and changed the game. In 107 BCE, he allowed poor citizens to join the army and gave them weapons and armor paid for by the government. This move not only increased the number of soldiers, but also created a full-time professional army. Soldiers started serving for longer periods, which made the army even stronger. As Rome grew, so did its weapons and strategies. By the 2nd century, they had armored cavalry and powerful siege weapons, including giant stone throwers called onagers. These upgrades kept them ahead of their enemies. Joining the Roman army wasn't easy. In the early days, soldiers only signed up for short campaigns, but later it became a full-time job. Most recruits were about 18 to 20 years old. Over time, Rome started recruiting more men from outside Italy. Citizenship didn't matter as much anymore, but soldiers had to swear an oath that they were free men. Lying about it could lead to harsh punishments, even death. Life as a soldier was tough. Discipline was strict, deployments lasted a long time, and soldiers had to pay for food and clothing out of their wages. But there were perks too. They got steady pay, food and medical care. They could also earn bonuses, loot, and promotions. Officers, called centurions, made a lot more money than regular soldiers, sometimes up to 54,000 denarii a year, which was a huge amount back then. By the 2nd century, things calmed down, and there weren't as many wars. Army bases started to look more like small towns, with baths and amphitheaters. Soldiers could even get married unofficially, although it wasn't made legal until Emperor Septimius Severus allowed it. They could also own slaves, which made army life a bit easier. While ancient historians like Dionysius and Plutarch do not explicitly state when the Roman army shifted to manipular formations, they do describe changes in tactics and equipment that align with this transformation. Livy offers a clearer picture of this evolution, explaining how the army moved from a dense phalanx, similar to the Macedonians, to a more flexible arrangement based on maniples. These maniples were small units, each consisting of approximately 120 soldiers, and were organized into 3 distinct lines. The first line, the hastati, consisted of younger and less experienced soldiers, often equipped with light armor and armed with javelins. These troops acted as the vanguard, testing enemy strength and absorbing initial attacks. Behind them stood the principes, older and more experienced soldiers, who carried heavier armor and shields. They formed the core of the army's combat strength and were better prepared for prolonged fighting. The final line, the triarii, comprised veteran soldiers who served as the last line of defense, holding their position until called upon to reinforce the battle or cover a retreat. Each manipul was subdivided into smaller groups, enabling better coordination and adaptability during combat. For example, a standard company included 3 banners or vexilla, each with about 60 soldiers, commanded by centurions and supported by standard-bearers. This hierarchical structure ensured clear command lines and smooth communication across the battlefield. Roman legions, the backbone of the army, were composed entirely of citizens and typically numbered around 5,500 men. They were divided into 10 cohorts, each containing 6 centuries. A century comprised 80 soldiers, grouped into 10 tenths of 8 men each, reflecting the tight-knit nature of Roman military life. Cavalry units, though smaller in size, usually around 120 men, played a crucial role as scouts and messengers rather than direct combat forces. The legions were supported by auxiliary troops, often recruited from non-citizens. These auxiliaries provided specialized skills, including cavalry, archery, and slingers, which complemented the legion's heavy infantry. Over time, auxiliaries gained privileges, including the prospect of Roman citizenship after their service, which made recruitment appealing. Auxiliary units were classified based on their composition and roles. Alle quingenariae consisted of cavalry units organized into squadrons called turmae, each with 30 men. Infantry cohorts mirrored the legionary structure, but typically numbered around 480 men. Mixed cohorts, combining infantry and cavalry, offered versatility in different terrains and battle scenarios. Later, units called numeri emerged, recruited from local tribes. These groups retained their native fighting styles and often required minimal adaptation to Roman tactics. Elite units like the Praetorian Guard provided security for the emperor. Unlike regular legionaries, Praetorians served shorter terms, typically 16 years, and received higher pay. They wielded considerable influence, acting as both protectors and political instruments within the empire. Their proximity to the emperor also made them pivotal in power struggles and succession disputes. In addition to ground forces, Rome maintained a fleet to secure maritime trade routes and support coastal operations. Urban cohorts served as a police force in Rome, maintaining public order, while cavalry detachments, such as the equites singulares, reinforced the Praetorian Guard. The Roman military hierarchy was meticulously structured. The legatus legionis, often a former praetor, held supreme command of a legion. He was assisted by 6 tribunes, including 1 of senatorial rank and 5 of equestrian rank, who performed administrative and tactical duties. The praefectus castorum managed camp logistics and took command in the absence of higher-ranking officers. At the operational level, centurions played a vital role, leading their units in battle and enforcing discipline. Equipment and weaponry reflected the army's focus on practicality and efficiency. The pilum, a heavy javelin, was designed to disable enemy shields, forcing opponents to abandon them and fight unprotected. The gladius, a short stabbing sword, allowed soldiers to fight effectively in close quarters. Over time, sword designs evolved to improve cutting capability without sacrificing thrusting power. Defensive gear included the scutum, a large rectangular shield reinforced with a central boss for offensive strikes. Armor types varied, ranging from chainmail to segmented plate armor, offering different balances of protection and mobility. Helmets, such as the Montfortino style, featured cheek guards and neck protection, showcasing advancements in personal defense. Siege warfare relied heavily on engineering. Roman armies deployed catapults, ballistae, and battering rams to breach fortifications. Smaller devices like scorpiones targeted enemy troops with precision. When necessary, soldiers undermined walls or constructed siege towers, demonstrating the army's adaptability and technical expertise. Daily life in Roman camps revolved around discipline and routine. Soldiers trained regularly, practiced formations, and participated in route marches to maintain readiness. Camps functioned as miniature cities, equipped with workshops, bakeries, and hospitals. Tasks ranged from repairing weapons to building roads and fortifications, ensuring that soldiers remained productive even during peacetime. Tactical formations emphasized flexibility. The triplex asses, with its staggered lines, allowed troops to rotate during battle, maintaining pressure on the enemy while reducing fatigue. Defensive squares countered cavalry charges, and ambush strategies exploited terrain advantages. Junior commanders often took initiative during combat, reflecting the decentralized leadership that characterized Roman tactics. The Roman army's victories, such as those at Lake Regillus and Zama, showcased its strategic brilliance and discipline. However, defeats like Cannae and Teutoburg highlighted vulnerabilities and prompted reforms. Despite setbacks, the army remained a formidable force, shaping the empire's expansion and stability. From its organization to its equipment and tactics, the Roman military system was a model of efficiency and innovation. Its legacy endures as one of the most influential military forces in history, reflecting the ingenuity and resilience that defined Rome's dominance for centuries.